And I've spoken in 23 foreign countries and to groups from 100 to 700.
We can tell from your voice.
Yeah, sorry about that. They all get it. I mean, if you can get somebody in front of you or in front of one of our films, we have 10-minute, 30-minute, 60-minute, 2 hours, and if you want, I'll speak for 5 hours on this subject. But even 30 minutes, they get it. 90% by show of hands. Of those who haven't initially accepted our position that these buildings were destroyed by explosive controlled demolition. They get it. And this is why. Because these forces, explosions versus fires, are quite different. Let's talk about fires. It's an organic process, moves through a building every 20 minutes or so. So when a building falls, collapses due to fire, it's a slow, gradual process. The building falls over asymmetrically. Not that we've ever lost a high-rise structure due to fire. We haven't. And there's been over 100 examples of very hot, large, and long-lasting fires in these buildings. But say in a wood frame building, it'll begin to fall over. So we have a sense of how fire behaves in high-rises already. But on 9/11, we have 3. Now, explosions are quite different. We have thick, billowing, enormous pyroclastic-like clouds with suspended solids and these cauliflower-like shaped smoke clouds that expand rapidly due to the incredible heat released from the explosives. It's very different than the dust from a collapse. And we have witnesses that hear sounds of explosions. They see flashes of light. Now those explosions can be harnessed in controlled demolitions like these. And we have hundreds of examples from across the country to draw a comparison because this is how high-rises are demolished. This is the only way they're demolished. In fact, NIST should have looked at explosive demolition as their first, if not their only hypothesis, since every high-rise has come down due to explosive demolition. And as you'll see, it looks exactly like one. And since fires never brought down one, they've got their priorities backwards. Now, what happens here is you have the columns have to be taken out in very precise order, starting with the interior going exterior, starting with the ground up, synchronistically timed floor by floor. So the result is a free fall collapse straight down into a, usually free fall, not always, into a pile that's broken up, ready for loading and shipment. This is a feat that only a handful of companies in the United States can accomplish, and fire never has. Okay, so you get to see how easy this is. There's a typical set of characteristics associated with this. These is all direct evidence of explosive destruction, and fire can't create any one of these characteristics, let alone all of them. So with additional supporting documentation from government, experts agree, those without an axe to grind agree, it's a controlled demolition. An axe or a bias or a particular persuasion based on government contracts, like all of our explosive demolition companies in the US have. Foreknowledge, these are planned months in advance. So if you know about it, you know it can't have happened on the afternoon. You don't set a set of explosives in a building in the afternoon and bring it down. But this is all proof of controlled demolition. Now let's apply that proof and see if Building 7 has any of these characteristics. Many people don't even know about Building 7. Is there anybody here who hasn't heard much about Building 7? So we'll fly through this one here in New York. We have a 47-story skyscraper. Many people don't know. This is the 3rd worst structural failure in modern history, and yet most architects and engineers know nothing about it. It's a football field in length away from the North Tower, and at 5:20, it goes down in the afternoon. It was not hit by an airplane. So here it is standing during and after the collapse of the Twin Towers. Let's see if it has any of these typical characteristics, beginning with, is there a sudden onset of destruction at the base of the building? Let's listen to Dan Rather.
Seeing high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Now we go to videotape, the collapse in this building. Tomato. amazing, incredible picture work. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
In fact, dozens and dozens of, a whole bunch of journalists described it similarly the way Dan did. Of course, he's using his intuition. Hey, I've seen this before. It's the old hotels in Las Vegas. What? So what? So what? What we're told is something very different. But let's take a look and see if we have a symmetrical collapse straight down into its footprint as we compare it to a node-controlled demolition on the right, which is and building 7 on the left. Is there any similarity? Is there enough similarity to warrant an investigation into the possible use of explosives? Okay, they look almost identical. Okay, so we have some real problems here. What? NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, tasked with explaining all 3 of these collapses, told us that normal office fires brought this building down. Now, this was 7 years later after juggling this hot potato. Normal office fires, not jet fuel, which no plane hit, not diesel fuel, which there was in the building, and not damage from the North Tower, but normal office fires, which have never brought down a steel frame skyscraper. Problem is, these normal office fires, there's about 8 to 10 fires throughout the building, they were out on the story that, the floor that NIST tells us initiated the collapse with these massive flames, but photos show that those fires were out. Now I encourage you to, we're just flying through this. We have about 20 minutes to get through all of this evidence, okay? It takes 2 hours. So I want to make sure you get the DVD if you're really interested in this, or go to our website. You can watch it there. These office fires were out, and they resulted in the complete catastrophic total destruction of this building, like a house of cards, in about 7 seconds from top to bottom. And so we have a real problem there, because this is a moment steel frame resistant building. If there was any collapse at all, we might have a 20-story pile with falling over, and there'd just be a huge mess. It would destroy buildings next to it. Do we have a symmetrical collapse? How does that happen, symmetry? Well, look, we have 24 core columns in the center. Controlled demolition companies have to take those columns out, and most likely the perimeter columns as well, within a fraction of a second of each other on each floor, synchronistically timed floor by floor. If you don't do that, the building falls over. And there's plenty of examples of failed controlled demolitions. How fast did the building come down? Free fall. NIST acknowledges this after being forced publicly to admit that they had made a mistake before in denying the free fall collapse. What does that mean, a building free falling? It's gaining downward momentum. It's unresisted completely by any of those 80 columns on any of those 8 floors. 8 floors because 100 feet is the amount of distance this building fell in free fall. I mean, let's try to understand something here. I'm going to drop this DVD. By the way, 9/11 Blueprint for Truth. It's available in the back. I'm going to drop it. What's going to happen? 1, 2, 3. It falls. It falls at free fall acceleration. Why? There is no resistance. Save a little bit of air in that case. So that means it's converted all of its gravitational potential energy into kinetic energy, motion. It can't do any other work, get it? And fall at free fall. That's the definition. So NIST acknowledges this, but they deny, or they do not acknowledge the implication of free fall, which means that those columns had to have been removed. How do you remove those columns? You can only do that explosively, and that's why you have almost every column being completely severed from each other, which allows a 47-story skyscraper to collapse into a pile only 4 stories high, like a house of cards. Buildings that fall over due to natural causes, the building hangs together. Its structural system is not completely dismembered from itself. Its concrete, by the way, is not pulverized to powder. So We have witnesses that hear sounds of explosions. Here's Kevin McPadden, former Air Force medic, first responder. What does he hear?